scene. Well, up next, what does artificial intelligence mean to you? Our next topic is giving voices the power to change nations, AI, democracy, and social listening. Our speaker will explore how AI can move a nation or even global society. So please help me in welcoming a digital minister of the Taiwanese government, Ms. Audrey Tang.
Unlike many people today working on digital democracy, I am an optimist. This strange condition began when I was 15 years old. That was 1996. I discovered that the future of human knowledge is on the World Web, and all my textbooks were out of date. So I told my teachers, I want to quit junior high school and start a web startup. And all my teachers agreed with me. And ever since then, I joined this fabulous internet community. And I learned this new political system when I was 15 years old. It is the Internet Engineering Task Force. It is the World Web Consortium. It is later on the open source movement, the Wikipedia Foundation, and so on. And all of this based on the radical transparency, on civic participation. All this, I'm applying it to everyday politics in Taiwan. And surprisingly, it's working, and it's transforming our society. So this is my office, literally, the digital minister's office. This is the Social Innovation Lab in Taipei, Taiwan. It is co-created a year ago by 100 social innovator organizations. The soccer field here, you see, is a co-creation by people with Down syndrome, with trisomy differences, while we look at the world using the lens of text and numbers. People with Down syndrome look at the world using the lens of geometry. So it turns out when they paint out the world that they see, it creates a very creative space that when people step in, it drives people's innovations. And the space opens until 11 p.m. every day, including weekend. And I'm in the space every Wednesday. It's my office hour. So from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., anyone can come to talk to me as digital minister. The only thing that I ask is that we publish the entire transcript online so everybody can learn what new ideas there are. And so many people come to me and ask to try their new ideas. For example, this one. This is a self-driving tricycle from MIT Media Lab called Persuasive Electric Vehicle. And the great thing about those tricycles is that they're very slow. When we hear about self-driving vehicles, one tends to think about trucks, buses, cars. But because these are tricycles, they harm nobody when they run into walls or something. So it's like a sandbox. It gives much more room for people to explain and explore the norms around interaction with AIs, which I call assistive intelligences, meaning that they are here to assist the society, not to lord over the society. And so because my office is very close to the Jianguo flower market, the elderly there, for example, go there weekends to buy pots of flowers. And they can, because it's open hardware and open source, they can ask their grandchildren to tweak, to hack these tricycles so that they follow them on the flower market. They can buy pots of flowers, place it on them. Once it's almost full, it can summon another one, and at the end of it, they just ride on one, and it drives them home. And so the greatest thing about this kind of social inclusion is that then we can figure out which part of the technology doesn't fit the social norm. For example, people really didn't like this red one-eye cyclope design because it's open hardware. People can very easily change that to two eyes. So now they blink at you. They can do verbal and nonverbal expressions. And there's a lot of interaction possibility that wouldn't be possible if it starts at a very high speed. And so this kind of co-creation lowers people's fear, uncertainty, and doubt when it comes to emerging technologies. And 2.5 years ago, when our president, Dr. Tsai Ing-wen, in her inauguration speech, she said, before, when we think about democracy, we tend to think about opposition between two opposing values. But now, she says, when we think about democracy, we must think of a conversation between many diverse values. And indeed, the role of government has changed. In the previous century, before the social media, before the internet, basically, the government acts as organizers. We find out, for example, people caring about economy on one side, environmental on the other side, about innovation on one side, and social justice on the other side, and so on. And then the rope, that is the career public service, often invisible, but absorb all the tensions. They have to try to drive kind of a balance between the two organizing values. But now, because for all emerging technologies, people just organize among yourselves using the right hashtag. You can just gather, millions of people very easily. So the government stops acting as an organizer in Taiwan. The idea of co-governance that we're pushing in Taiwan says that the government's role is now a facilitator. We ask a different set of questions. We ask, people have different positions, that's fine, but are there some common values? And we ask, given the common values, can there be innovations that delivers those values that everybody can live with? And so we introduce a set of sandboxes around Taiwan. There's almost 100 cases if you go to sandbox.org/TW. In each of those cases, an innovator, often a startup, asks, why can't the municipality change a regulation so that my emerging technology have the room to grow in the society? And instead of a black-white decision, they can now get 1 year in any of the various realms, platform economy, fintech, self-driving vehicles, to prove that your version of the regulation is better than the existing one. And after a year of proving that to the society, people collectively decide whether it's a good idea or not. And if it's not a good idea, we thank your investors. Everybody learns something. It's open innovation. If it does work, though, your regulation becomes our national regulation. And so in this way, the regulators don't have to regulate something that we don't have first-hand experience of. Many regulators, when they think of self-driving vehicles, they think about something that flies, something that's on the road, or something that's on the sea. But actually, it could be something on the road that then flies. It could be something on the sea that then gets on the land. There really is no limitation of possibilities. And so the sandbox gives everybody the first-hand experience for a year so that we can collectively decide what's the regulation that's best fit for this kind of norm around self-driving vehicles. So if it works, it can be scaled out, scaled up for another year. But at most 2 years, your regulation will be our regulation, the national regulation. At any point, the MPs, the members of the parliament, can say, oh, we want a special law for that, because a special law is better than a generic law. So if they want to make a special law for that, they can take 3 or 4 years. But during those 3 or 4 years, your business, your proof of concept is still legal, and it's still operating in the municipality, essentially giving you and your investors a limited time monopoly, because everybody else is still illegal, you see. And so because of that, we use open innovation to drive regulatory co-creation for the benefit of the society. Now, how do we actually know that those innovations are fit for which municipality or which township? There really is no alternative other than just going to the rural places, to the indigenous nations, to the remote islands to talk to people and discover their social need. So some people call it ethnography. I say it's just hanging out. So I hang out with people, tour around Taiwan, and I always bring with me a 360 or at least a 4K camera. When I bring those cameras with me, the space changes. Because although it's only me that travels, everywhere in Taiwan we have broadband as human right. So anywhere in Taiwan we have 10 megabits per second. If you don't, it's my fault, you can talk to me. And because everywhere there is very affordable broadband, like unlimited 4G connection, it's just $15 per month, we can always get a high-speed link back to Taipei or to Kaohsiung, to Taichung, to Taoyuan, and so on. And so the 12 ministries, they virtually gather around me in the town hall meetings, and they see eye to the local people through this way of live-streamed teleconferencing. And through this way, they're not just abstract numbers to them. The innovators on the local can very easily spread their innovations and quickly get an interpretation from the ministries. And because everything is radically transparent and published to the internet, the people in the other municipalities and localities can very easily replicate this after they see it on exhibit. So this is one of our exhibition places in Shalom Smart Green Energy Science City. It's not just about the green energy, but it's also about self-driving vehicles with the Taiwan Car Lab and so on. It's like a zoo. You can just step into it. It's right outside the high-speed rails and look at tomorrow's emerging society and technology. If you tend to like that idea, you can just bring it out and say, oh, in our regional revitalization plan, I want to include this in my township, and then we will work with whatever ministry involved to make sure that your dream become the reality and try out for a year. Now, when I see this kind of experiments, the hardest question is always, how do the society collectively decide what is the norm, what is the regulation about it? What you're seeing is a real conversation, an AI-powered conversation among the different positions that people take on an emerging technology, in this case, ride-sharing. And so in this kind of conversations, which we have held constantly since 2015, we first ask for facts. When we talk about open data, it's not just open government data, but also open citizen data. Everybody look at the same facts, and then people share their feelings. Around the same fact, you can feel happy, and I can feel angry. It's all okay, right? So we give 3 weeks or more to people's feelings. And then we start brainstorming. The best ideas are the ones that take care of the most people's feelings. And finally, we take those best ideas and turn them into regulation. And so the interface looks like this. It's again a real conversation about self-driving vehicles. You see one sentiment from a fellow citizen, you can agree or disagree on it. And as you agree or disagree, your avatar, the one in blue, moves among your social media friends, your families, and so on. So these are not nameless trolls on the internet. These are your friends and families is having an asynchronous conversation about emerging technologies with them. But you will note there is no reply button. We discovered that if you have the reply button, people with the most time wins. The trolls always dominate the conversation. You can attack each other very easily. But if you take away the reply button, there is no way for trolls to play. If 500 people come vote exactly the same way, they're just one dot in this principal component analysis map. It means nothing, right? And so because there's no reply button, every time we hold this kind of AI-powered conversation called polis, it looks always like this. So to the right, you see maybe 5 ideologies, different divisive statements that divide the society, which people would agree to disagree. But if you look at the popular media, you would saw that that's the only thing that people cares, but it's not like that. On the left side, most people actually agree on most of the things, with most of the time, with most of their neighbors. And this is the reality. This is like a reflective space that let the society see, oh, we have rough consensus, which comes from internet governance. We have rough consensus. Now let's make something, a running code. In this time, a code of law. A running code, a new regulation that captures those rough consensus, and we can table those divisive discussions until later. And this is the way to rapidly iterate and deliver on advanced regulations and keep the innovations taking care of people's feelings regardless of their positions. Now I'm going to wear the other hat as the hacktivist and share this community called GovZero in Taiwan. GovZero is one of the backbones in Taiwan's social innovation. It's a very simple idea. It's a domain name called g0v.tw. Every government website and service in Taiwan ends in something.gov.tw. So these brilliant civic hackers built a shadow website for the government website that they don't like. So if they don't like the government budget visualization, for example, which is something GOVTW, you can change your O to a 0 and get into the shadow government, which is always interactive, it's more fun, it's open data, and it's crowdsourced. And the GovZero projects, of which there's around 200 forked government websites and services, about 1/10 of it has been merged back into the government because the GovZero movement always released under the Creative Commons and open source licenses. And so they turn those budget items into social objects. You can drive into one that you really care about. You can have a real-time conversation. And now all the 2,000 or so projects in Taiwan in the national level is actually a discussion board. You can have a real-time conversation with the career public service because we have merged the budget.g0v.tw into the e-participation platform, join.gov.tw, which has 5 million users out of a country of 23 million people. Another GovZero project, this is the air map. So if you go to air map G0VTW, you see a real-time map of Taiwan's air quality, in this case PM 2.5. And every single one dot of it is actually built by citizen scientists. It's not a government project. In many UN-related meetings, when I present this case, especially in Asia, many other ministers ask me, how can you let 2,000, 3,000 people measure the air quality? Don't you know that they're going to trust their neighbor's number and not the government's number? And I say, yeah, of course, the government should trust the people. The people shouldn't trust the government. And people should trust each other. And that is what democracy is all about. If the government doesn't trust people and expect trust from the people, it's fascism, right? So the government needs to earn the trust from the citizens. That is the main point. So in Taiwan, we always say, if we see a citizen movement like that, we cannot beat them, we just join them. So by joining them, I mean a few things. First, we ask the citizen scientists, where do you want us to help? Where are the places that you want to have those air boxes but cannot get in? And they say, oh, industrial parks. They suspect them of pollution, but it's private property. And we're like, oh, we own the lamps, so we can actually hang your air boxes on those lamps and things like that. And that's the first thing. And the second thing is that we can actually provide high-speed computation. We have one of the top 20 supercomputers in the world, Taiwan 2, and we just aggregate all those numbers, not just from Taiwan, but over the world, anyone using the airbox systems into the National High-Speed Computing Center. But why do people trust the collective intelligence platform, which is CI Taiwan GOVTW? Because we use distributed ledgers. We engage people who specific in distributed ledger technologies or DLTs and just snapshot those numbers and store them on the DLTs. So it makes sure that even if we have one of the fastest supercomputers, we cannot change people's numbers around the elections and things like that. And so it's very important to make people trust each other's numbers in a way that is maximally transparent and accountable instead of, asking people's trust as a blind trust. And so this is actually the way that we drive our president's platforms forward. Our president, Dr. Tsai Ing-wen, gives out every year 5 trophies to so-called trilingual teams. Each team, a cohort of 20 voted in by the citizens, is from the public sector, from the private sector, and the social sector. Together, they prototype something in 3 months. And the 5 winning teams, after the demo day in the president's office, receive a trophy. There is no money, there's no investment, but the trophy is a projector. When you turn it on, it projects the president handing the trophy to you. And it's very useful in internal negotiations. It signifies the presidential promise that whatever you did in the 3 months, we're going to make it a public policy in the next year, and we're going to maintain it indefinitely. Again, this is a way to crowdsource the national direction. And so through this way, we work not only on economic or social or environmental parts of the Sustainable Development Goals, but rather all 3 bottom lines at once. And we use digital technologies to make sure that people can trust each other on reliable data. We encourage effective cross-sectoral international partnerships and also ensure that it is open innovation. These are all just Sustainable Development Goals. When I joined the government to work with, but not for, the government 2.5 years ago, I was asked to write a job description because I'm the first digital minister in Taiwan. There was no digital ministers before. And so I wrote a prayer, a poem, as my job description, which I would like to conclude this talk with. So what you're going to hear is literally the job description of Taiwan's digital minister. It goes like this. When we see the Internet of Things, let's make it an internet of beings. When we see virtual reality, let's make it a shared reality. When we see machine learning, let's make it collaborative learning. When we see user experience, let's make it about human experience. And whenever we hear that the singularity is near, let us always remember the plurality is here. Thank you very much.